Hello everyone. Today we have a short demonstration on how you create a form in Dreamweaver. There'll be a follow-up demonstration about how to actually style that form, although we might poke into that real quickly in this, but I want to keep it short and sweet because this is pretty dry material. Um, and first of all, what is a form? Well, as it explains on Canvas, a form is just something with input fields so that the user will enter some sort of data, whether it be like their name and email, so that they can join a mailing list, or maybe they want to purchase some tickets. There'll be some spaces for their name and credit card info and that sort of thing, and some sort of submit button at the end so they can send that data to the web server. Now for this class, we are only going to create the form and style it, and we will have it generate a thank you page so that it does something, but we won't be able to actually make it work because we'll need some sort of script on the server to have this happen, right? So we're not going to write that. You'd usually work with another developer who specializes in scripting. They would write a script, or sometimes if you have a web server, they provide scripts for you, or your web host would do that. So you don't need to worry about writing the script to deal with this input. And some of the names for the variables you would be given by the person you're working with as you design this, the backend developer, the person who's doing the scripting. All right, but we're going to write it, or we're going to create our form, and we're going to style our form. All right, in these next two videos. Okay, so first of all, I have already prepared some things in here's my local root folder, my forms demo. I'm going to provide you with the start file, which looks like this, and the end file. And just to show you, I do have something that I've already prepped to show you what it's going to look like. Something like this, except it's going to have some graphics at the top that explain the ticket options, because no one's going to buy tickets without knowing what they're buying. So you don't have to create a ticket purchasing form. Your form can be for something else. But you should explain your ticket prices and what you get for your tickets and that sort of thing. Don't go straight to like Ticketmaster or something like that from your drop-down menu. Like, give them some sort of explanation and then put a button to purchase the tickets, and then take them to Ticketmaster if you want to do it that way. That's totally fine. But tell them what they're buying. Okay. All right, so this is what we're creating, and there's some things we're going to do differently here. So first of all, normally we've seen HTML under insert, so we just go to form, and you'll see all these form options. I'm going to close this one. What I have set up for you already is you do want to have some sort of div or section to put your stuff in. So if I put it in my split view here for a minute, you'll see that I have a section that's responsive. It's set up to be, what did I set up to be? It's called my content section. It's 38% of the screen. It has 1% margin, so that makes it 40% of the screen, because remember you have to have not the margin, the padding. It has 1% padding around, so that makes it essentially 40%, and then that leaves 60%, so it's got a 30% left margin, and that puts it in the center, right? All that would add, if you add the other right margin, which I didn't add, but it'd be 30%. It's just automatically filled in with 30%. Okay, so we have that already. So you will want something like that. You don't just want to drop a form on a page. And within that, I have a heading, which I wrote a rule for, and a responsive image, which actually I also wrote a rule for. It's called class responsive img, and all that does is set the image to 100% widthwise. All right, so we need the next line, so we're going to jump here. Now here's something also different. I'm going to highly recommend that you jump into design view after you insert your form. So we're going to insert a form, and then we're going to jump into design view, and I'm going to show you why. Because Dreamweaver is a little quirky when it adds things, as you all might remember. Normally we've been adding everything down here very specifically within our code view. Here we're going to do it a little bit differently, but we will add our form first in our live view. Okay, so go to insert menu. Make sure the form goes in first, because everything needs to go within the form. So we'll just click on that. It inserts a form. Now, super handy for all your form work is this little properties inspector. properties window. I would call this something like, you know what, I'm going to call it something very specific because oftentimes you'll have several forms on a complicated website. So I'm going to call it ticket form. Notice it'll fill in the ID as we work. And for the action, this is where I want to generate the action on our submit button, which we'll always have to put at the end. You have to have a submit button. So our action will be my thank you HTML form is what I want to generate. It's on the top level of my local root folder. There it is. So I don't have to specify a folder, but if it was in a folder, I'd have to specify that. But I'd like to put all my HTML files on the top level of just a small demo like this, just to make it easy for y'all. Okay, so make sure it's all lowercase. It should be the same with your file. And then for this method, do post. Now, this oftentimes won't work when you preview things in Dreamweaver, so you actually have to take your page, drag it into your browser window, and try out your submit button. All right, just remember that. It won't probably work in the preview of Dreamweaver just because of the way technology works, okay? But notice it put all this stuff within our form. Okay, I'm also going to jump down here and just put a little space there. Okay, so the reason we're going to jump into design view now, all right, so you can see this little skeletal red outline and the cursor blinking within that. Okay, I'm actually going to click on this window. Normally we almost always work from this code section down here, but we're going to actually work in the design view for now. The plus side of this also is that my fixed footer goes out of the way because it doesn't know how to display it. So that's a plus actually because it lets you guys see it better. So all right. Where should I put this properties? I'm going to put the properties thing up here because it's nice to have that up there as well. All right. So again, my cursor's here. The first thing we're going to do is enter, go back to my insert, and we're going to do a text field. Now again, make sure that you're under design view because I'm going to show you the difference. I'm going to do two text fields, one in design view and one in the live view, just to show you the different way it writes the element. So we're going to do a text field, which would be like your name, or they almost always start with this. So I can go right here to text field, and I can say first name. And then I can even write something in here if I want, like, I'm looking down here to make sure it's, I'm going to undo that for a minute. We're going to wait on that one. So then I'm going to go to my keyboard, and to make things easy, I'm just going to do a shift return, and that'll put a break, as you see in the code. So I did shift return, that puts a break, and then I'm going to go and just show you, we'll enter another one, and again, we're not formatting this just yet. We'll call this last name. Now, usually when you'll notice when you enter information, they always break things down to first name and last name, just because the script will need like very specific variables. If you've ever had to write any sort of script for something, you want to generate very specific things, like you want to organize things by last name, so it goes into a data set with last name as one of the categories. If you just said name, it'd be a lot harder to sort of figure out how you organize names, because some people write the first name first, some people write it with a comma. So this makes it very specific, a very specific data set. That is also why you oftentimes have to do a drop down for the states, instead of writing your state in, because some people might put North Carolina as NC, some people put lowercase nc, some people write North Carolina, some people might write N Carolina, or all kinds of things. So they make you pick a very specific thing, even though you have to go through this crazy drop-down list. Well, okay, it's not crazy, it's 50 states. All right, so let me put in this next. I'm going to hit again a shift return, That adds a break, remember. Scroll down here a little bit so you guys can see what's going on. So I put a shift return, and this time I'm going to jump to the design view for just a second. Or I'm sorry, to the live view for just a second, just to show you the difference. So notice when I put the previous pieces in. So here was the first label. Notice it put both this label and input, and so did the second one. The second one, I'm going to put a return here. I don't know why I didn't break that one up. They both put label and input. Okay, the label is the piece where it says first name. That's the label. First name is the label. Last name is the label. And you can tell looking at the code on line 56. It says first name for the label. And then the input is this white box where the user inputs information. Those are really important, first of all, and I put these on Canvas because these are our HTML elements. Label and input are both HTML elements, and we can use them when we make our selector. Like when you go to our CSS designer later, you'll see we can write, we can use the word label as a selector. So all our labels can be, all the text in our labels can be gray or something, or use a specific font family. We could even make a background colors of our inputs. We could make a CSS selector for input, and those background colors could all be tan or something that would complement my design. Although white works pretty good because I used white for all my. I won't change that in this case, but we could. All right, but so let me go down here, like we typically have added and inserted things. And please keep that up for everything else, just forms is different. We're in live view now. I'm going to do the same thing I did before and add a text field. Okay, so notice some things. In this case, when I added it in live view, it only gave me the input. So just this white box. Now I could, if I want, go to the label field down at the very bottom and add a label on my own. Totally fine. But it's marked up with a lot of very specific important things when you add it through the design view. And since this is your first form, it'll be easier in the design view, all right? Because you won't need to remember all the little things like type equals text. Like you wouldn't probably know what kind of type you'd by default use. And that probably doesn't make much sense to you. But for the person who's writing the script, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so it's just quicker in most instances to use the design view. So I'm going to take this piece out since it doesn't match everything else. Jump back up here. I've already put my break in. So hopefully I'm on the right spot still. And insert. So here's where I just instead of keeping to add all my pieces, I should have kept my final picture open. I'm going to come back to that to save time and just add a few more things. Okay, so what are some of the other things? Well, yeah, some of this is pretty explanatory. Like you could say, oh, what's this email thing? I could add one of those and say, after. Make sure down here it did go in the right spot. It did not. It's not in my form. That was my problem with jumping out of there. So I'm going to put my cursor here. Oh, I'm still in my live view. I also forgot to switch to my design view. All right. That's why it's also easier to tell where your cursor is. So email, it puts an email thing in there. All right. It's also basically field. So the beauty is, and I just did undo. So you can literally go through and add these things. I'm undoing them as I add them just to give you a sense. So they're all pretty basic. Like you might, what's a range? Some of them won't look like they do much, but you can put, that's for if you have a range of different things. Okay, month, diet, date, time. Those are all self-explanatory, date and time. Okay, text area. So what if you want to just add a comment form? Like this is like for portfolio site. If somebody wants to send me email or purchase a piece or whatever, I have a little text area so you can write comments. So the thing that's a little bit different from this, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm got a second break in here. The text form, all right, where to go? Text area. It lets you do a certain number of lines of text. And by the way, if you keep this open, it'll tell you like how long you can make the column. We're going to override this with a rule. We're going to make all these be like fit 100%. But you can say like the default rows if you want, stuff like that. Max length. It gives you, if you keep this open, you can even say if it's required. So you can make it so that they can't send the form by checking that little button unless they fill it out. So, sometimes people forget to fill out things like their name or whatever. You can make that required. Okay, you can also give it an initial value. So it tells them like, what to do. That's what that's for. Okay, but I'm going to take that out because we don't need one of those in here, but you should know because a lot of people need to see that. Okay. Refresh. Okay, let's go back there again. I'm going to just keep making sure I have breaks in here. Oh, I do have an extra one there. Okay. What might you need? So if you are doing a ticket form, these radio buttons and these radio button groups are pretty handy. Checkboxes will be just what they say. If there's a bunch of things people can ask for, like maybe like actually let's just put one in. So the checkbox, maybe you're selling timeshares or something, and you want to send a brochure, so you can have a little checkbox there. People can put a little check in it, and then that data would be sent to the processing script. So that might be something you want to use because I could do this for my ticket options. Single day tickets. All right, and then I'll need a few of these. At this point, you can probably tell what's going on. I could cut and paste this if I wanted and do 2 more, or I could put a break and add another one, or just simply add another one without a break because maybe I want them all in the same line. There's also a checkbox group, which I could have done too, but I'm just going to do checkbox. And, oh, that one didn't give me an input. I must have clicked, because I clicked down here, so I wasn't paying attention. So let's undo that, go back up here. So I ended up showing you the difference again between, where you're at in your code view or live view. And you know what, since I'm going to need 3, I'm just going to add another one. But again, I could have done checkbox group. Oops, I should have put my cursor in here again and done checkbox. Doesn't seem to know where I want it to be. All right, so this was single day tickets, 2-day tickets, and everything tickets, all in tickets, whatever you want to call them, something cool. All right, so super applicable. We would need another input for our credit card. But that one would be probably a different type because again, credit card information is super specific and important. Again, I'll come back to filling in these things so they look good to save time. But let's see, some other things we'll need. You will need the submit button at the end, but we're going to save that to the very bottom. let's see, select. That's what we want to use. So this select thing will let us put in, 4 or 5 options for credit cards. Um, so we would need a text field for the credit card number first, before we stick this part in. And we would say, we'd make it very specific that it needs to be like a 16-digit, because you can say, in these fields up here, how big you want it to be. All right, so for some things, you want to be very specific about how many characters they can include. Let's jump back down here for a minute. For the select thing, we don't want the word select in here. We're going to put like credit card, just so you can. But notice, for this, if I click on my select, I can click this little list values and say, I want like what's the Visa? And this value, this is what would be given to you by who's ever writing the database or the code or the script, to tell you what value to put in here. And then we'll hit the little plus, and then of course there's a MasterCard, and let's say the value they give us is MC, and then should I just put, I will just write, everyone calls it Amex. Probably should have put Amex in there anyway. Let's just do that. American Express. Okay, and then we say okay. And then there's a little drop down. It won't work in the design view, but and also we could, if we want to do list values, we could hit the plus one more time and say like select your card and move that up to the top. And say not give it a value, say okay. So that they could see that in here, if they, that way it wouldn't have a default card if we didn't want. Okay, so what was that? That was our, I almost forgot, so we can just look at our fields. Our select, all right, which is a weird name, but I guess it makes complete and utter sense. Okay, let's see, what else do we need here? Let's come over here and hit a return. Well, at the end of every form, this is pretty skeletal, but let me look here to see if there's, so a radio button group. We'll just add one for a second, just so you can see. A radio button group gives you different buttons you can add. Like maybe I want to do the tickets this way. And I could say like 2 days, etc. And then I get, so pick line breaks for how to insert them. Not, we haven't ever used tables anymore. So the thing about a radio group is it only lets you pick one. So, this is probably a good time to preview this guy. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, again, we're going to format it in the next little thing. So see, if the radio button group only lets you pick one option. So if you want to use checkboxes, I can pick as many checkboxes as I want. If I did, so these are single checkboxes, remember? And this is a radio group. If I put radio buttons singly, then I could click as many radio buttons as I want, but they just look different. So, pick one that fits your style of your and design of your site. Okay, the last and final thing we need, because I want to wrap this up, and would encourage you just to experiment, is I'm going to come over here, make sure we're still in design view, hit a shift return again, and add the submit button. So the submit button should be at the bottom because it's basically the last thing of everything, but it's right here. This is critical because without the submit button, you have to have this in your form. It doesn't matter if your form is 1 field or 20 fields. Put the submit button at the end because there's no way to send this data without it. All right, so with this, we can also do a few things. Say get your tickets and tab out of there, and notice that value is what's actually goes in here. So submit sounds pretty lame and you know, banky or geeky. We're trying to be a little more exciting because, you know, you're going to go to a music festival, which now in this time of COVID-19 sounds like super fun since there are none. So I'm getting excited about going to see a music festival, even though we can't actually see any. Oh well. Okay, so anyway, you've got to have that that in there too. And there's an option for form action, which again, you would be given this by your the programmer that you're working with who's ever writing the script. So some of this data in here would be important, and that would be given to you. And you can enter it all through this properties window when you're a professional web designer. Okay. All right, so that's all we need to do for now. Again, there'll be another short video because this looks like crap. I mean, it doesn't look so good because we haven't done any sort of design to it yet. It's just a bunch of fields. But our form is basically done. One thing we could check that is probably good is to see if our it's working. If we click on get your tickets, it should mention that we purchase tickets. No one likes to click on something where they're spending money and not know what the hell happened. So let's go ahead and preview this. Now again, this probably won't work unless this new version of within Chrome when we're in our preview window, because remember these are this generated like temporary previews. So you'll probably get this code is not allowed, but watch, I'm going to take the exact same file from my local root folder. I have it, I'm going to put it over here so you guys can see it. So you can actually see that it is my local root folder. So there's my local root folder. This was my demo begin, or wait, what file was this I just did? Oops, I'll close this guy for a minute. This is my demo end file, demo end HTML, because it's the one I'm going to supply you. I'm going to keep working on it. And so I'll go to my demo end right here and open my browser and make a new tab and just drag my demo end in there. All right, so we can see it, and we'll try it here. And there we go. So again, it works when I just do the local file, but it didn't work when I did this temporary file generated from the preview window within Dreamweaver. So to really check it, just take your file from your local root folder and drag it in. And again, this is really how you should check all your files in the end, you know, outside of Dreamweaver, so that you don't need to worry about any weird issues about Dreamweaver previewing them. And just to recall, you should, you know, make sure you toggle your screen a little bit to see how your responsive elements are working. So, you know, I have a responsive footer, responsive content, and there's just a bunch of padding in here, so I have a lot of flexibility. So, all right, that is all. We're gonna look at how to style this in just a sec.